Hello, everyone. My name is Noah Nichols. This is episode 0, Billy Corgan Zero shirt of Strife. And we are going to be talking with Kevin Massing uh, alongside myself.
Hello.
There you go. About the process of writing in and of itself, basically. And we're just going to go on a little journey together here and try to see how we do things with our stories, with our storytelling. So, Kevin, introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I guess we would start really from the beginning, right?
Yes.
We're going to attack this, the
From
process.
when you started.
Start at the beginning. So I don't know how it works for you, but for me, a lot of times it comes from music, listening to a song, and just sort of pace my room a little bit, kind of close my eyes.
Yep.
I don't leave many things on my floor in my room, so that way I can just kind of walk around freely with my eyes closed and sort of daydream.
Yeah.
And sometimes it comes in just the form of one scene that I then write a story around, and other times it feels like it's the trailer of a movie and I'm seeing a bunch of different things happening. I have different characters in place, and it
really paints the visual.
Yeah, and then the visuals come, and then I have just a notebook laying out, and I'll stop for a second, usually pause the song, write the thought out,
Yeah.
and go from there. Other times it's pulled from the news, but for me, I would say my most consistent form of coming up with new information is or a new topic for a story is I think about, sometimes it's predetermined a little bit to where I know what I want to get. I kind of have an idea for the story that I want. And
Yeah, you have like bullet
to
points.
Yeah, I have an idea, and then I try to frame that idea. I pick a song that I kind of get into, and then I just kind of drift away for a minute into La La Land, and then I come back with an idea. So for me, that's usually step one, which will make this interesting because as we go through this, I know our goal is to co-author a story throughout this series, whether it be just one short story or wherever,
or a whole novel.
Yeah, and just in that way we can use that sort of as an example while we go. So that's my process. We probably won't be able to do that, which means I'm up for a challenge right off Jump Street.
We kind of have to adhere to each other's styles, but then kind of make our own style if we co-author a thing.
Yeah, I can't just disappear for 8 minutes while you talk to people, and I just throw some headphones on and nerd out.
So
as much as I'd love to.
Before we get to me and my process, I'd like to ask you specifically about: do you focus on word count, or like when you focus on a day of writing, you're like, I need to hit 1,000 words, or else it's all for naught. It's fucking worthless. Or do you go, whatever comes out, that's fine, and I can salvage whatever later?
There are two things I don't ever care about until it's deadline time, and that is word count and title.
Okay.
I don't. Those are things I think that are ways that you sort of create roadblock for yourself.
Yes.
You can really put yourself in writer's block. If another thing, character names. I have been known to change character names throughout drafts because I refuse to let myself get bogged down by it. So if I'm struggling to come up with a character's name, I will think of something random, just throw it in there and just move on. And then when I have the story finally out of my brain and it stops giving me a headache, then I can go back and be like, okay, well, I don't like what I named this dude, so let me go back and find it. And if you're going to self-edit, or if you're going to hire an editor, they're going to catch any time. You know what I mean? If you misspell the name or whatever it is,
you're going to be stopped.
You should catch it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are a couple of things. I refuse to let them bog me down and get in the way. You have enough things in the world that can give you writer's block, so don't do it to yourself.
Yeah.
Working titles are fine, stuff like that. So I don't. And word count, like for instance, we were talking the other day about. Actually, not the other day. It was earlier today.
Just recently.
About a story, and you had asked me if I had published it onto 500 words or less, and I told you that I originally wrote it for 500 words or less.
Or
I got stuck.
Are they called? I think it's fewer than 500.
Okay, fewer than 500.
Yeah, but
we should get
that's
that
somebody
right.
should check that out.
Somebody Google that.
Yeah,
but
it's a good site though.
Yeah,
good
it's a great
stories.
place to get some work published. But I stopped working on that and had left it alone for a long time until we came up with the Bad Dinner Guest site, and we needed more material for the blog. And I thought, well, this is going to be longer than 500 words, so why don't I just finish it and post it where, whatever, there are no requirements for me to, I can just post it on my own site and get it out there.
Right. I mean, well, your imagination in general should be unlimited. So to box yourself in, if you come in with an idea of, well, I'm going to write this story and it has to be under 500, well, you're kind of pigeonholing yourself into something that's unnecessary.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you have more to tell your story, that's how it should be.
Yeah, you could be setting yourself up to fail for really no good reason. And that's a thing that can discourage somebody, especially when they're first starting to write. You don't give yourself any reason to want to give up. So why say, and why even set a limit of saying, well, I'm going to write at least 500 words today? Why do that?
It's stupid.
When you get to a certain point and you're confident enough, then start setting those kind of goals for yourself. But early on, just kind of take what comes, honestly, and just work on it. And one of the things that I do once I've started a first draft is, because I haven't written a novel like, say, you have, when I sit down to write whatever I'm going to add today, whatever content I'm going to add, before I get to it, I reread everything I've already done. So my first draft, essentially, by the time you've seen it, is really like a 5th or 6th draft, because every time I've sat down to work on that draft, I've edited it up until I start.
Yeah.
And that way it doesn't take you a year to get through a project,
Yeah, I mean, self-editing is essential.
But yeah, I find it a lot easier just to do it as you go, rather than to sit down and then try to sit down and re-edit your entire novel or piece from the beginning.
Well, like you mentioned, the novel. Mine, like, I didn't, when I started No Net, I didn't say, like, I'm going to write a certain set amount of words and I want it to be a certain amount of pages. I just wanted to tell the story that I wanted to tell, and whatever it would turn into, so be it. And it ended up being almost, I think, around 95,000 words and just under 400 pages, and that was fine. And before editing, it was more than that. But basically, if you box yourself into something, I mean, that's limiting yourself, and that's unnecessary to me. I mean, I don't think that's. People get so weird about their control. Like, people want to control their own mind and the way that they go about things, and I don't understand why people get so hung up on that. They should just be a lot more free form, while having a set plan, as your ideas, your bullet points. But yeah, it's just I guess that's a mystery. I don't think I'll ever solve on people's psyche. Right. So
you're up then now, because I've explained my extremely odd thought creation.
So basically, in closing with you, is you do more of like a stick and move kind of thing, jab. If you have you don't get weirded out by word counts. Just when it comes to you and the music, you do it.
Yeah, well, that's where the idea usually comes from. And then, as far as that word count or any of that starting up stuff, whatever I get. For me, there are 2 modes of writing. There is when you're in sort of concept mode, where you're just coming up with ideas.
Yeah.
And then there's when you're following through with an idea and trying to look at the finer points and focus on the details of it and actually put the pieces together. And I think it's 2 different states of mind for each task, because that's just how I've chosen to operate with it. When I'm sitting there, for instance, I'll be sitting down when I'm working on a story. I won't do this. I might take a break and listen to some music.
Yeah.
But when I'm actually writing, there's no music that I'm listening to. I find that it distracts me, and it can set the tone for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And affect the words that come out. So I don't really do it that much. When it comes to the start, I think it's great just to listen to a bunch of different music and jot down a bunch of different ideas, and then sit down and have a snack and read over your notes and see which one you want to pursue.
Impossible for me to write without listening to some type of music. I mean, it's just in silence writing your story. I don't know. Like, to me, that's for the birds. You know, like, I love and I like to listen to a lot of like post rock or instrumental or ambient stuff sometimes too, because I find like when I listen to music with a lot of lyrics, that distracts me for whatever reason while I'm doing my stuff. So I love instrumental because it kind of, there's so much good instrumental music out there that you could listen to an album and just get whisked away in it, and love it, but it doesn't distract you from being in your own world of, what you're writing about. So that's what I love to do. And I guess I'm up. So I'm going to take it.
Walk me through your process.
Well, as you know, I have been really kind of firing on all cylinders. I have No Net, which is my first novel that came out in late January, I believe January 29th of this year. And my second novel is about to come out Wednesday, July 20th, and it's called Cat Incarcerated. And I also have, with my editor, with Tamara Beach, we have made a book called Strands of Sand, and that's it's done and it's ready. We're just waiting on word from Kindle Scout and see if we're picked up. And if we're not, then we're going to probably send it to agents and see what happens. But basically, so I started not even a year and a half ago or so. And so now under my belt, I have 2 full-length novels, essentially, and then the one co-authored with Tamara. And it's because when I get into it, I get really into it. Like on weekends that I'm free, I'll go to my operations is a little different than some. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of others that have done it. I mean, I go to the library and I'll just sit there, and I'll either go in a study room with my laptop, or I'll go on one of the computer terminals, and I'll just write for like 5-6 hours straight. And I will turn off my phone. I will get really into it, and then people get upset. I'll turn my phone back on, and they'll say, "Where are you? What's going on? Why aren't you answering this text?" Or they act like it's so urgent of something, like they need to know something. Like,
okay, yeah,
you know what I mean? And so I like to go on the computer terminal, even though I have a laptop, or I could just stay at home or whatever. But I like to go on the computer terminal there because they usually give you like 5 or 6 hours of a time limit, and there's a countdown. So mentally, that gives me a mode where it's right on the screen, where I'm like, oh fuck, I have to write, and I just, I don't distract myself from Facebook, Goodreads, anything, Twitter. I go straight up into the world. I use what I use is Noveler, and Noveler is a great writing program. It's Novlr, and it's a really clean program. It costs money per month, like $9 or something. But I got in on a lifetime membership when they were offering it for like $100 to just have it for free, or for your whole lifetime. And I wrote all of Cat Incarcerated in there. It shows your stats every day, what you average, everything. You can do it offline and online. It's really cool. I'll have to show that to you sometime. You can try a trial out for it, and it's really cool. But yeah, I mean, I keep it going, I keep it moving, and I don't. A lot of people, a lot of friends of mine, like they'll write their first novel and they'll stay with it. They'll be married to it for like 4 to 5 years, and then when it comes out, they'll say, "Well, I worked so long on this," and then they get devastated if it fails. Like, "Well, I put my heart and soul into this." See, I have a self-imposed rule where I don't spend over a year on one project. Yeah. Because if I do, I mean, my God, like I worked on No Net like 9 months, I would say, the whole process. and I felt like I lived with it forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, but then again, the people that work on books for 4 to 5 years, they're jabbing on it and then they're ducking out for a while, for months. See, with No Net, I started May 23rd to October 23rd, and every day I did it obsessively until it was fucking done.
Right, and that's a different process because there have been projects that I've worked on where I feel that they have benefited from me taking 2 or 3 months where I worked on something else, and then I came
clear
back
your
to
mind.
Read it, had a different perspective on life at that point.
Yep.
And could see some of the weaknesses and see some points where it's like, oh, well, you just kind of wrote that based on the mindset you were in. That's not really a message you'd like to send out there.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it really kind of depends. It can work both ways for you. I know.
Yeah, everybody's different.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong way. There really isn't.
I, for one, prefer to be working on multiple projects at a time because should I get into writer's block with any one project, I like there to be other options. Be like, okay, well, I'm stuck on this. Let me see if I can't. And rather than waste the next 40 minutes spinning my fingers while I try to come up with an idea that's not going to come, so I'm trying too hard. Why don't I just focus my energy elsewhere and see if I can't be productive with the time?
Yeah, you're trying to avoid like getting stuck at a dead end.
Yeah.
With one project, pretty much. But yeah,
so it's always good to impose deadlines.
Yeah, and the great
you can sort of prioritize how you have that rotation.
Yeah, and the great thing about writing and novels or short stories is, you can, like in real life, like if you're in a conversation with them, if it's an argument, whether it's that or whatever. Sometimes you leave it and you're like, oh shit, I should have said this, but I could never get that time back. At least with a project, with a novel or whatever, you can always, it is a conversation that you can revisit, you can travel back in time to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what I love about it, because there were things in No Net where I'd be like, well, I should wrap this into a lot because there's a lot of interconnecting. And before I released it, I actually did an add-in of like Tamara and I, we killed out like 4,000 or 5,000 words, but then the add-ins that I implemented into it was like 3,500 or something. And then, so you killed out all those words, but then you drop in more and then you hone it. And it's just really interesting. But and a lot of people don't. I've noticed a lot of friends and just fellow writers that I know that they find excuses not to put it out or take the next big step, I think, because it does take a lot of courage to put yourself out there on Amazon and stuff, because when you're out there, anybody can say anything about my book. Believe me, there have been things that have been infuriating. I'm like, fucker, yes, text messaging does exist, in a world without the internet, but you can't respond to them because it's deemed unprofessional. But you want to slap the shit out of them.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on critics. I personally don't really care what anyone should have to say. Now, that being said, I've written some stories where the feedback I've gotten in general has been, well, that story was really depressing. Mm-hmm. And that sort of makes me feel bad, because while on one end, my goal is, as long as I made you feel something and you felt it strongly enough to respond to me in any way, then I win, because you did some thinking. You did your job. Yeah, I did my job. You felt something. Maybe I didn't intend for you to feel happy, but there are times when I don't intend to depress people, and I get to respond back like, that was a really depressing story, man. It's Friday night. Why'd you ask me to read that on Friday night? And then that's when I start to feel a little bad, and then I consider, well, is there a way for me to re-edit this and make it more entertaining and make it as entertaining and still get my message across and not have people say I peed in their Cheerios? But then I always fight that urge and say, no, I didn't. I wrote this for me. Here, the message I wanted to get across.
Well, you should have two main goals as a writer, and if you accomplish them, then you've made it, in my opinion. And that's number one, is what you said. Get your point across, or someone takes something from it and learns something or feels something. And number two should be, don't be fucking boring. Don't be dull and mundane, and just do Johnny went over there and then he opened the door and then he lives on this street, and already you've lost the person. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Like you have to have a way to color your words or intrigue. Like your short story, Coming to Terms, it built like a snowball up the hill. You know, it rolled and it built up into an avalanche of like a big lesson, of a cautionary tale in my eyes, that made you think well after you were done with it. And that's the style that I love too to do. Like the one thing is all you know the small minority of people that have disliked the novel No Net is, yeah, they've talked shit about it, and they're not happy that it wasn't answered, like the big mystery why the internet was out, which will be answered in the sequel coming up, but they never once said it was boring. And you know what? Honestly, I would rather have a 1-star review.
We've got some fans.
Yeah, some fans of the dogs.
Fan drive by.
I would rather have some 1-star reviews where, you know, they get very pretentious about word choices and font use, rather than one line of just a 1-star of a person going, "This book was just fucking boring."
Well, see, and there's where I sort of maybe split away from you a little bit ideologically there, because I don't give a shit.
You don't give a shit
what they
think
say at all, because that's great for them to have that opinion. I have had that opinion about many things. Don't get me started on Michael Bay movies. I will become a very different person talking about him. So
you mean like the boring aspect, the boring?
No, just in general. Like if you don't like it, then you don't like it. That's okay,
that's their opinion. Yes,
yeah.
Of course.
And for me, it's like I've come to terms with the idea that a lot of the things I might want to come across won't be understood. So with that will come a lot of anger and like, this is stupid. It doesn't make any sense. And then there also is the human aspect of not everything that I write is going to be good. I'm going to want to think that it's good.
And also, people don't get your story. They don't live in your brain. They don't know what you were meaning to really get across.
Right. So the idea, I sort of treat writing like therapy, where I don't want to see a psychologist and talk through my problems. So I like to write fiction about issues or thoughts that I have about things in the world, and just like to put you in random what if scenarios to kind of make you think about things that you might not naturally think about. Because I think that it's asking yourself random questions like that help gain some experience, because we tend to only see things from our own perspective. So perspective is a big thought behind what it is that I'm trying to do. And so with that in mind, maybe we should try to brainstorm. You know, we'll both be sort of out of our element here, but if we're going to work through an example of the process, we should probably start with trying to brainstorm some ideas. So you actually have co-authored before, and I haven't done it in this sense. I've worked on scripts with multiple writers before, but that's sort of different. It's you take this scene, and then later one of us edits it and makes it all uniform.
Are you wanting to know like how to go about like doing a project?
No, I'm wanting to start a project right now.
Like right now to do a story.
I want to spitball right now to get at least a couple ideas out. Well, by that way, when we start the next one, we'll have some ideas to work with. Hopefully, we'll have some feedback. If at the very least, you and I will have ideas in our head to start. And if we're going to make this an introduction, sort of an example of what we're trying to do, I thought what better way than to have a small sample of us trying to do it. You know? And what better way than to do it when we're off guard.
Yes, I have no idea. I'm like
no preparation.
I am like frantically trying to figure out the story right
so,
now.
Well, I can see, and that's part of it. You know, occasionally you might have an opportunity thrown your way, and you might just be frantically trying to come up with. Say you find out about a competition, and you're like, man, I'd really like to enter a short into that comp. That happens to me all the time in the film world. Oh man, this short horror film festival's coming up in 2 months. We don't have any idea for it, but we'd love to enter it. So let's come up with a script from scratch. And so, I guess I would start with things that we have in common. So I would imagine that because you have your major things that you need to figure out to start a story, like the time, the setting, which could essentially be one and the same. The overall message, which I think is what we will work our way to, by kind of putting some of the other pieces together.
Yeah.
Whether
you want to do it modern times, futuristic, or
right. So I imagined ours would be probably in the future because you've already done some things in the future. Most of my work is set in the future.
Yes. But not too far off into the future, more so people can...
It's more like alternate, more like parallel futures. Like it's not far away, but it's also not necessarily on the same plane.
Like big what ifs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. So, I mean, what would interest you right now? Like, let's say, for instance, I don't really feel like writing a spy thriller. You know, maybe we can even go backwards. You know, sometimes how you
like pick something that we don't want to.
Yeah, maybe just start with the things you don't want to write.
I'd like to write a novel of 100,000 words in a fictional town, and that's a hospital, and it's a rom-com.
Who are you, Penguin? Like, what are you, some big
no, I'm just trying to sell out. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Man.
Yeah, man.
Selling out already.
Yes, RJ.
You guys keep bringing up word count. Is this something that comes into a writer's mind consistently?
Without
apparently, because
by the way, this is RJ. He's in on our listening. He is not a writer. He is a spectator currently, but he is a creator.
Right, and that's a great question because, in my opinion, I would say the answer to that question is no. But apparently, like Noah's,
there is a hang up on it.
Is there? But then it's also, again, we're living in different worlds where I write basically unpublished short fiction, and essentially besides that, it's all been screenplays where you're worried about a page count. It's not a word count at all.
Well, let's get into that too, because I wrote the Strands of Sand with Tamra in November, and the goal of that was to kind of accelerate and do 50,000 words or more in the month of November for NaNoWriMo. So there are things like goals that you can do there, but it's all optional.
Yeah. So, which I guess is what I'm saying is the word count thing. It is optional because for instance, I don't. And
nobody judges you on anything. Like
it just seems like it would be very creatively limited.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely
no. Write a great short story. That's that. Why shoot for that? And
well, there. You know what's funny about that is that there's a site called 101words.org, I believe, and I've had 2 stories published on there. But the gimmick is that you have to have a short story that's exactly 101 words, and it's crazy because like when I did the 2 before I kind of like submitted them, I would write it and then you would have to like count because you can't trust programs because sometimes programs get skewed up, they get messed up. So you have to like literally like count each word to make sure it's right. But but it is limiting. I mean, like I said earlier, when I wrote No Net, I didn't go, I'm going to make it this certain amount. I didn't even know what the links of the apps were going to be. Some apps were just 2 to 3 pages. Some were 40 pages.
Yeah. Just to clarify, the apps are the chapters in this book, right?
Yes. Apps are, the chapters are apps. They're called apps. And the reason why I named that, not only just the conception of it, the conceptual thing of it, but it's also that the way I looked at it is apps, actual apps on stores like iTunes Store and whatever, they all vary in sizes. So that's how the apps in the book are. They all vary in size. They all come in shape and size, different shapes, sizes. So word count shouldn't matter.
So for this instance, I'm going to say that for us, word count shouldn't be in our thought process here as we're brainstorming.
And we shouldn't even say it's going to be a short story or a novel. We should just what we should do is just write it and see where it takes us.
You have to come up with the idea first. Unless you're, again, because the only time you're talking about really having to follow these guidelines is if you're writing for a competition or writing for to enter it, to be submitted, to be published. So if you're listening to this introduction to the process, you're probably not to that step at all, and it's not a good place to start. If you're writing, you should always just start writing for you and figure it out from there. So for what we're kind of trying to do, we're just trying to come up with an idea, something that we can get passionately behind, enough to the point where we'll talk about it once a week and put it on air and do what we can to kind of help budding writers come up with some ideas for how they might work through a story.
Well, the way I'd like to get an idea right now is try to figure out, because the way that I did the co-author, The Strains of Sand, I did the man section, she did the woman section, and then we collaborated on everything after that. So after those two parts, it almost went up to 100 pages, and then after that we collaborated, and then we just basically tag team. So I know you were talking about earlier, like, you do this part, you do this scene, you do that, but with a tag team, it is a fine line, because you had to get in that ebb and flow of it. So almost like you have to base your idea with another person, with a team, off of how you're going to write it. You know what I mean? Like, do we put a 2-man? Do we have like a story, let's say, of like a car breaks down in the desert, and then it's a guy and a girl, and they just broke up, but they're, you know what I mean? Like, Like,
so
there could be a story.
I have an idea, because it fits right into what you're saying, and I always thought it might be difficult to write on my own anyway.
Okay.
So I always wanted a story where you get the story from almost every character in the story's point of view except the protagonist. Like, the story is about a character, but you get your information based on him walking into a donut shop and there being two people sitting at a bar or sitting at a counter, and they see him come in and then they start a dialogue.
You build the world of the protagonist.
You build the world around the protagonist, and
from
you never once
preliminary characters.
Yeah, and then maybe at the very last chapter is that person's perspective or something like that. And that gives us a chance to split it.
I like that.
To divvy up the work, as you would say.
Well, I'd be down.
It's always a different perspective anyway, so it doesn't matter that it's a different voice.
Okay, and kind of divvy up each character. Kind of like, if there's 10 characters, I take 5 sections and you take 5, but they all build around a protagonist that we speak of, and
right. And I wouldn't do it numerically, so to speak, like that. But yeah, exactly. Once we came up with the idea, we'd take the number and just split it in half.
Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't start out by saying we need to come up with 10 characters.
Yeah, because that's
unnatural.
Let's
come up with the character list and then split that list in half.
Yes.
So, I mean, is that a sort of...
I'm interested
because I'm all about trying to find different ways to tell a story, different ways to utilize perspective to tell a story, to help people understand that so much of life is how you choose to view it.
Okay.
And what better way to sort of kind of get that out there than telling a story about someone without ever really getting their side of it. You just get it walked through,
And I also kind of like the idea. My mind started going off on this deserted, like, kind of like Arizona desert setting where, like, let's say you had a guy, and you could say this sucks or whatever, but I'm like going in this.
I love digging the confidence.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is gonna be a New York Times bestseller.
I forgot to give you my disclaimer before I gave you mine.
Yeah. but like, let's say a man and a woman are driving a car. They're cross country. She just found out through like getting in his phone that he's been cheating on her or whatever, and she wants to work it out, but she fucked his car up and put like some, like, she fucked up the engine, right? She put something in, I don't know what, we could figure that out later. But when they go on a trip together, the car breaks down, but he was planning on breaking up with her, but she fucked his car up, and then the whole story could be them arguing and talking about infidelity, and then, is he an asshole? Is she an asshole? And then you find out their relationship. Does this suck or is it good?
I mean, I think it's a good idea. I personally don't want to write that because I there's a reason I've been staying out of relationships lately, and it's to work on art, and so I don't really want to spend one day a week making up a fake shitty relationship. Also, at that point, one of us would have to be the girl.
Yeah.
And
let's just make them both. Let's make them both men.
And so what I was going was for something a little bit more open than that, because what you're talking about is cool, but that's literally only 2 perspectives. Still, I'm talking about telling a story.
It's a simple setting.
Anywhere from, let's say, 4 to 8 perspectives, where it's like we're talking about this guy. You finding out about this guy by
you find
having
little shreds of information.
a chapter of his boss setting him in and talking to him, and it's from the boss's perspective. And so but it's all first person point of view.
Can I do like plot twist with this idea, or should we not talk about maybe hash out some spoilers for our made up story here? Like,
no, there shouldn't be spoilers.
Okay, we're just hashing out, so people can see it. Well, what if we? Because I really do find that idea of yours intriguing about, an unspecified amount of people are the preliminary characters, but they feel the story and they run it. But they're talking about this man that you really never meet, but you learn more about, right?
Yeah, and he's the main character of it. The story will be about him.
Exactly.
You'll be following him throughout the day, but you'll never get his point of view on things.
But you know what's cool?
The very end.
It'd be a good ending on something like that is you build him up. You don't know if he's good or bad, but then you find out how all these people are connected, and it could be something like they all work together, and then at the end of make it really dark, and then at the end of the fucking book or short story or whatever, like he just shoots them all up and kills everybody, and then it's over, and then he commits suicide.
Well, that is a way.
Isn't that awesome? That would be a very interesting story, because what I'm saying is you could make it very discreet. You have like maybe whatever amount of characters, right? You fuel the story, and he's a nice guy, or he has a little trouble, or whatever. You can hash it out for however you see fit. And then at the end, when you go to his perspective, his first-person perspective, he's going to work. He's had enough. And this would be realistic for these times because people are going crazy here and there. Right. And then you would have a guy just unload on all the people. And then in the narrative, you could say, all those characters that you invested with, in a way, I think that would be effective because you would have the characters that you invested with while, like you said, learning about the protagonist, so-called protagonist, and he turns into the antagonist all at the same time and kills all of them and then kills himself. And then we could figure out why he would do that or leave a mystery and just show that life happens when it happens. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
I don't know.
It's just funny when this whole thing started way back when I was the dark one. And that's just funny.
And I'm turning the dark one.
It's just like,
but if you think about it,
jump right off the bat with
that twist,
just fucking kill everybody. And I'm like, oh, well,
but
great.
see, but you would, but we would have to do it in a way. The only way that would work is if you really made it seem almost pedestrian, still interesting, but pedestrian. Like it's a very interesting, interconnected tale. But then at the end, it just gets bleak, but then you can almost keep it mysterious. Why did it happen? And then the lesson of life is, well, shit just happens. You know what I mean? Things just happen sometimes. So
yeah,
it's just one story suggestion. I mean, you could take it either way, or you can make him a really great guy. You could do whatever you want.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're still in the opening stage. I mean,
we're in the cocoon.
If you're cool with that idea, we can go ahead and go with that premise and start to work forward and try to figure out.
Well, I mean, if you like it or don't, you don't think it's.
Well, I mean,
as
far as like, are we in agreement that we want to do have it be from a bunch of different perspectives?
Yeah,
and not
I'm down with
final
that.
Characters until the end.
Oh, I said I'm down with that.
So at least we have that to work with.
And you never hear a word from the protagonist, the man in question. You never hear anything from him from his own mouth. It's everybody else talking about him or discussing.
Well, maybe you might not be able to never hear a word,
okay.
But maybe it's pretty like some simple stuff. Because like for instance, one of the examples I was gonna have was like to have him be in a meeting with his boss.
Okay.
Maybe you don't get much other than like a yes sir. I think it'd be really really difficult to have him be mute unless you have it be constantly people observing him in places, but then it also would add another.
But to me, that would be interesting.
Why is everybody talking about this dude?
But to me, that would be interesting in a way because it would be almost challenging to where you don't have him talk. But then at the last chapter, it's like, oh my God, I'm in his perspective.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Well,
like I'm dropped in it.
Hear a word from him, that's fine. And then
plus, I can't think of a novel that is done. What's that, Artie?
I was going to say, just find me at the end of this. But what if? Again, I love the idea of no clear protagonist.
Yeah, like a mystery
view of him. But what if the only snippets you heard from him were like the snippet of the cashier as he was exiting the store? That kind of thing.
Like have a great day. Or
that kind
here's
of
your cigarettes.
bullshit that other people
I like
in
that.
your story would have heard him say. but not actually from his viewpoint.
You would be
right, like
a
I'm
beta
saying,
reader
like
right
yes sir and no sir, and
yes,
bosses
okay,
and stuff like that.
Okay, I like that.
So yeah, what you're saying is
RJ with the beta reader right now.
That's
big
good. Big time.
That's good. I like this idea, and the thing about it is, I've read a lot of books, and I can't think of a novel, short story, or whatever that has been told in that certain way. Because in a way, that's very challenging to do, but it's very mysterious, interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm down for that. That adds another layer to it. It's going to make it very interesting.
And you could call the book something like A Gray Area or something like that. You could figure out titles, but that's down the line. Like, you could figure out something.
Right. Again, you can use Gray Area as the working title for now, so you have something to reference it to. Because to me, I think it's best to end it, to title it. For instance, like, I didn't have the idea. I didn't think, oh my God, I'm going to write this short story, Coming to Terms, and it's going to play out like this. It was like, no, I was like, here's the message I want to tell in this short story. And then when I was done with the short story, I thought, okay, well, what's a way for me to sort of have a misleading title, but once you understand the story and then you read the title again, you're like, oh. Well,
you want to hear something really funny is, I don't think I've ever told you this, but No Net wasn't my original choice. I pride myself on, I want to get every single title that I have, it's never been used before. Because there are a lot of books that come out that are like the same. You know what I mean? Like Eve, and there's like 100 Eves. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, so my original title for No Net was Offline. And then I actually searched it online and on Amazon, and there was a really cool short story, which I haven't read yet, but I'm going to, called Offline. And it's like this girl, something horrible happened to her, but the authorities get her Facebook account and the messages and show her talking to this guy that ended up like, I can't remember if he like raped her or killed her. And it's like a mysterious, like almost like a Cloverfield thing, like this is what we found here. And it's like that. And it's like a 50-page story. So when I saw that was named Offline, I was like, well, shit. And then I thought, what would be another cool thing? And then the reason why I came up with No Net was, I did you ever see that movie called The Trigger Effect, where like everybody lost their power and then people kind of like got angry? It was like in the mid 90s. It's with Kyle MacLachlan.
No, I haven't seen it.
Well, it's like the power goes out and then shows people kind of relying on it and things break down a little bit. It's kind of like an indie movie a little bit, but I always thought of like, when the power is out, like, you got no power, like no power. And I figure like when the internet's out, people would go out and be like, you have no net? Like, no, I have no net. And then it's also a thing of, it's a double, you can take it for two different ways. No net is also means there's no net to break the fall. Like you're going to fucking crumble. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
the moral of the story is, you don't need to name it at the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah. You find it later.
Yeah, you wait until you have some meaning to work around it.
So let's hash out the process here, because the process of creating, we have essentially, and this is no bullshit, this is literally just happened on the fly. Yeah. And we already have a palpable idea, which is very interesting. And it's funny because when you put me on the spot here, and I was drawing a blank, and then when you suggested that, then I started thinking, and we just started spitballing, and now I feel like we have an idea that we really could explore, and it's limitless.
And that's usually how it works for me. Especially in groups, just start throwing some ideas out there. And there are no bad ideas in brainstorming.
And let me just say,
if anyone hates it, you got to get comfortable enough to just even stop giving disclaimers, to be like, this idea might be shit, but I'm going to pitch it to you as if I think it's the greatest idea I've ever had, because you need to at least pitch it with some energy, because if you don't believe it as you're pitching it to me, you've already put me off to it.
You're like,
if you say like, feel free to reject this, this might not be good, you've already put that idea in my head. Like if you walk up to me like all shy, like you just broke something.
So you're saying that Stranded story would be the greatest story ever if I didn't say that.
Right. So I'm just saying, like, just in general.
Yeah, but
it's good to start getting that way.
I just want to add again about the dark ending. Is that I think the only reason it would be very effective is because if we did a good job building the characters and in and around his life, in a unique way, it would be quite impactful at the end if they were all just, like just unloaded on, and just like you have this dark ending. You're like, why did this happen? And maybe it would be cool to not even explain it, or give a little few, like maybe you could give kind of dangerous, like, like forewarning, like throughout the book, that there may be a problem or he's difficult at work or something, but you don't know how they're all connected. You know what I mean? And then at the end, it all comes together, some way like that.
Yeah, that could work.
But I'm not married to the dark ending, so if you...
Right, I wanted to at least try to explore any and all possibilities before I get married to that one, just because I spend so much of my own time in a dark place. Again, it's like,
yeah, you would have.
It's like you really have cracked me in the ribs twice. Where it's like, first you like, yeah, let's do a book about a relationship, and I'm like, oh my god, just tie me from the roof. And then it's like, yeah, let's do something dark, and I'm like, oh man, but that's kind of like all I ever do. Maybe, yeah, but
okay. At the end of the book, he goes to Disneyland, and
right.
It's all happy.
Well, I mean, you try. Okay, all right. Way to be an extremist on that. That's like a typical like liberal argument right there. Like, oh, you don't want the story to be about murdering people, so why don't we just make them all suck lollipops and give each other high fives? You act like there's no. I know. I'm just trying to have some fun with it, but it's not like there's no middle ground in between.
Oh, there absolutely can.
Killing every single person, thus validating all the negative things.
It'd be fun.
My whole point was to have a bunch of different perspectives about this person, to where you really don't know what to expect from them, and then that's why I'm not going to jump right into the idea of him blowing them all away, because that's not the most. There could be something more intriguing.
Absolutely.
Than that.
Or you could have it end really ironic and just weird, like where like they go to him on the final. We go to him on the final chapter, and it's like you expect this epic like explanation of this man that you read all about, and then he just like stubs his toe or something, and he just says like fuck, and the book's over, and you're like, what the hell? And like you alienate everybody.
I was thinking more along the lines of like, maybe we go towards your idea, and then the last chapter you think it's him going through to do something crazy,
and it's something minuscule.
He like inadvertently is just like wrong place, wrong time, and he ends it, and like he gets caught up in it.
Okay.
Not necessarily that he did it, but like maybe that's how it ends for him, or maybe he has some sort of like ex machina, like sort of almost, maybe I wouldn't even call it cliche, but some sort of just like, I guess ex machina is the way to put it. Like, have him incidentally stop something, like have him have this meaningful death that actually,
like he dies a hero.
Yeah, he dies a hero. He goes from being just like whatever he pictures.
And then, I had a great idea too just now. Like you could have it end like that, but then you have almost like a back end final little chapter, a wraparound, and you could reveal that all these people know him from work, and they're all at work talking about his death and saying how great he is, but then one guy goes, yeah, but that fucker owed me $20.
Oh yeah, see, I wouldn't even go. See, I like the epilogue thing. They're talking about like a post chat. See, I don't like doing that.
Like you would end it right when he dies.
Done, I'm fucking done, man. Like there's no like.
Well, it would be a part of the story.
I'm done. No, I'm not. Like to wrap it up. Because to me that's just like.
Basically, what you're saying is when you climax, you climax.
Yeah, it's like just.
Yeah, you fucking sleep.
You don't want to come back for the last two dribbles at the end. Like, this point has been made.
Yeah.
I'd rather
everybody says pre-cum, but not post-cum.
I like to leave you, like, if you think of the story as like a cliff jump, I want to leave you right at that point where your feet are now off the ground.
Right.
And you have to come to terms with what you just did, but I don't take you all the way down.
But see, the great thing about this little idea is that it really can go anywhere, and that's what intrigues me about it, especially with my imagination.
Right.
So
the
we could take it anywhere.
We'll be wrapping up here in 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
The reality is that we will come back to it next time
with
a list of ideas that we've kind of thought through. And then
yes, sir.
I'm sorry, finish your wrap up there. I was trying to be real quiet about that. I had some questions for you once you wrapped up your thoughts on the story you guys are building, because I definitely don't want to interrupt that process. It sounds fucking awesome.
Right on.
I just had some questions as somebody that might be looking to write.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
I don't really have anything out there. But you haven't plotted out your ending of this book yet, but do you guys ever struggle to end your writing? You finished No Net.
Yeah.
Did you have an issue figuring out where you were going to end that book?
I had the ending. I had the ending immediately, and I think Kevin can attest. No spoilers because you haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
But the way it ends is very full circle.
Okay.
In fact, the opening paragraph is so reminiscent to the opening paragraph of the last app is very similar in retrospect to the beginning
and
of
you had
app
that
one.
plotted from.
Oh yeah, and it was one of those things where while we have talked about this idea here and we're spitballing here and figuring out what we're gonna do just for fun, and we're not married to any idea with No Net. When I figured out, I knew certain things. I knew I wanted to start it out with the man and the woman, and then the night before, and then I knew I wanted to visit certain areas, and I won't say what happened in the final app, but I knew I wanted to go there, and I knew that I wouldn't ever change from that, and I was told by many people that's the only way I could have ended it in a way, because it does. I think Kevin stated this on, I believe, the No Net interview where you said it's like satisfying, but it does open up the door definitely for another round.
Yeah, well, that's what you want to go for. Is like
Yes.
if it's first installment of a series, you want to try to make it to where it's its own complete thing, but also it gives you just like that.
So you plan this as a series then?
Oh yeah, I plan it. There's going to be 2 more, and I basically told Kevin the whole setup of the next one.
Yeah,
he's one of the only ones that
and
knows.
Back to the original question, where I'm at with it. There are times where if I'm lucky, I'll think of the ending first.
Yeah.
Like if I'm lucky, I'll think of a message and work my way around the story, work my story around a message. But there have been times, like for instance, there was this episodical I had on my old blog that the idea was I'd write one part. It would be a collection of micro stories to make one short story that would be maybe about 40 pages. Mm-hmm. And it was my homage to like the original idea of what James Bond was supposed to be. It was the original, because James Bond was supposed to just be like this average dude. That was the original idea behind those books, was just to be the most average special agent in the world.
Yeah.
And so I took like the original James Bond idea and mixed it with Jason Bourne, where this guy who had, all I tell you in the beginning is he had a head injury and 5 years ago that gave him a big government payout, so he didn't have to work anymore. But you would come to find out that he had been a spy and that people were coming after him. But he has no recollection of how to do any of that stuff, and he's a giant pussy. He's just a huge, he like dives under a bench when there's a scene I have where there's this jogger coming, and the guy goes to like check his pulse, and the dude dives under a bench because he thinks the jogger's gonna kill him. And it's like, but to get to that, I got, I think 3 or 4 parts out where I did it, and then it has never been finished because I got tied up in conflicting ideas on how I should end it and what story I wanted to tell, and then I just moved on. My goal is to come back to it now that we have a new outlet for short stories, and I have a place to where I can say, hey, look, I want to re-edit the originals and then add the ending and then put it all out as one thing. And it really depends. Sometimes you will change the ending 3 or 4 times. Sometimes you already know how it's going to begin and end. Sometimes some stories will an interesting technique is beginning a story where it ends. So once you come up with the end, like Carlito's Way was a movie that started in the last scene.
Yes.
And then when it gets to the end, you get like 5 extra minutes past that first scene. So it's like, holy shit. Because by the time you get to the climax, you're like, oh fuck, I kind of forgot that's how the story started.
And all writers and creators are different. Like, I don't know if you know this, but Stephen King, like a lot of times he said he would just start out with the predicament, the premise, and like, let's put these characters essentially in a paper bag and see them get out. And then he would write it as he goes. Yeah. I can't do that. I'm more of like, I have the beginning, the ending, and then the middle. I just kind of have some mile markers, but I just let it expand and I experiment with it.
That's the reason I asked about, and again, I hope I didn't distract from your guys'
Oh, no, not at all. You added to it.
Because that sounds fucking crazier than anything else that I could ask. But that's why I asked about word limits earlier. The way my imagination works is I start, and then I would like to see how my own imagination works.
Yeah.
Shit happening. I didn't know how people that actually had written a novel or people that wanted to pursue that.
Well, see,
like,
a lot of
work that shit out.
people that, and there are a lot of people that really limit themselves with, like you said, it's not good if people like focus on word counts, but there are a lot of people out there that like, I'm going to write a 75,000 word novel and I'm going to stick to it. And if I can't do it, I'm a failure. And that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, why would you think
You
that?
have enough of that stuff to do with that work. Don't make it
Yeah,
right?
but people try to self-discipline mentally, like, to the extreme.
And art is not really something. I mean, don't get me wrong. You have to. You don't just give up every time you run into a problem either.
Yeah.
You know, don't be on either end of the spectrum. But it's not something you should really be terribly hard on yourself with. Which again is advice everyone will give you. Every writer will give you that advice, and every single writer is a hypocrite about that. As the words come out of my mouth, I know that I'm lying to you because no one is a harder critic of my work than me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's good to try to remember, keep that in perspective. Like, hey, man, just chill out. You can only get better at this. The writing's not going anywhere.
And especially when you co-author, like, you know, Kevin and I are about to partake in that. If you've noticed when we were breaking the story or hashing this out, when he situated that and pitched it, I didn't say, a lot of control freaks with writing would be like, okay, well, let's do a short story, or do you want to do a novel, or what do we want to do? Like to me, I couldn't care less about whatever happens with the story as long as it's fucking intriguing. Yeah. And so if we write a story, this idea, because this story and this premise is one of those premises where at first it hits you like, oh, that's cool, but when you think about more what you can do it as a writer, it's very powerful. And so I really don't care if it's 10,000 words, 40, 50, 100. I don't care. It could do anything.
That's what I love most about a book over a painting as far as artists go, because there's so many different routes it could take, so many different ways to perceive it. Like, your creative vision is so open to other people's input and things like that. With a painting, if you put everybody's input into it, it wouldn't look right. But with a book, you can take, you guys can both paint the picture together and make something beautiful, if you're not so interested in control of the matter itself and in what is interesting.
And I don't think we would have a power struggle. I think it would just be Kevin would want the best and I would want the best for the project. Right.
And then just like, for instance, to what you said, I prefer stories, and I prefer to write stories where I don't ever tell you the race or anything past the gender.
Yes.
I might describe them as having long, beautiful hair. That's about it. I'm not going to tell you what color it is. I'm not going to tell you what color their eyes are. I might tell you their eyes were piercing.
People get hung up on
every once in a while, I might throw a detail in, like a color of the eyes or something, but nothing so that way whoever's reading it, it's not about me being PC. That's about me trying to appeal to an open audience, so that way. My goal is I make the outline and you tell the freaking story in your own brain. You just sort of
That's a good point,
along.
because
all the details are yours. They're yours to do with.
I don't go out of my way to say like this girl's white or like this is a Hispanic.
If it matters to the story because later a white chick is described, then maybe. But if it allows the reader to put themselves in that protagonist,
you know what's funny about that is I don't go out of my way to describe a person's appearance, because I feel like when I read a story, when somebody goes out of their way to describe that, I'm picturing the character in my own image anyway. It doesn't matter.
It really doesn't.
It really doesn't. Like the people that go over, there are writers that like do like the worst offense, and they like, ooh, this character's in front of a mirror, and then they go off and describe everything. It's like it doesn't fucking matter. Okay. You're going to picture it the way you want to, and everybody will picture it differently.
Yeah, I mean,
essentially.
Yeah, everybody has their own voice. I don't understand the control freak of the giving the full, but some people like to be that descriptive, and for some people that is their strength. There are people that can't write very good dialogue. So if they want to be able to get their ideas out, they're going to have to vividly describe everything to you and try to paint mental pictures for you. So that way you're still busy focusing on what the room looks like as you skim through the decent dialogue.
Yeah, and that's
you play with the tools. You work with the tools in your toolbox.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people sift through things like, oh, this guy's describing this house for like 2 pages. Who cares? Like that turns you off. You know what I mean? I go like maybe a paragraph or 2 tops to describe either a place or person or a setting, and then I keep it moving. Like because that's the story that I want to read.
Okay.
So that's how I write.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I think Kevin has the same ideology.
Yeah, and I like that you guys were saying like fuck the critics basically.
Yeah.
This isn't your guys' words, but
at
fuck
first,
the critics. But I'm also my own biggest critic because you guys are writing a story that you guys would want to read.
Oh, I'll
so
honestly
writing for
care.
Yourselves, but hoping that other people will appreciate it and be able to insert themselves in your own.
And believe me, you
if
go
you're writing
into the
just
game.
for yourself, writing your journal.
Yeah.
Like I have one of those. I have stuff that I write that literally is just for me.
But let me tell you,
if you're putting it out there, you want it to be enjoyable. So but it's still that same plight of you can't live and die on what somebody else is going to think.
And that's true, but you do go into the game when it's like game time. Like you upload and you're like, okay, no matter what happens, it's cool. But then when you get your first bad review, it fucks you up a little bit.
Oh, it stinks.
No matter what.
You're
because if you care about it,
but
it's like your child. It's your book baby. You know, like, how dare they like say that? They have no idea how hard it is. And then you take it personally, but then you get over it after time. And now, you know, if I got a bad review right now for No Net, I would live.
And just, you guys put yourself in the other perspective. That's something that's so hard for us to do. Just remember, you don't love everything put in front of your eyes either. And I guarantee you, of the 3 people sitting here have at one point in time talked mad shit about a performing artist. That they just weren't, just because we didn't want to type it up, on the keyboard. If somebody had been recording us on their phones, you know what I mean? It would have been out there.
Well, in closing,
so it's not like we don't talk shit about, so it's bound to come back to you.
Well, I mean, in closing, in my opinion, art is such a precious thing because let's say when we're long gone, when we're dead, somebody could discover my book, our book when it's out, your book, and they could love it. We're dead. It's a great book. Like they get affected.
Something to leave behind.
People are still reading Poe, Bukowski, Bradbury, and they love it. They're dead. So like their words live on. You know what I mean? And this has been a great episode.
This has been great, man. I have to get it wrapped up because there's 2 left on the network schedule for tonight.
Preliminary episode of Right Strife.
So we will get. Noah and I will be back on Right Strife.
Let me shake your hand. Is this agreed upon?
Yep.
All right.
We might not be in the same room next time. We might be just going over Google Hangouts.
We could trade off, figure it out.
You have a laptop, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. It's got a camera.
Chromebook,
Chromebook. That's all you need. I'm sure that's all you can do it on. Sean will be on his phone later.
I'm in a mental contract with you. I do believe in this little story that has kind of been born from this on the fly because I swear that we didn't talk about this before.
We hadn't talked in about 2 weeks before yesterday.
No.
But so I have one last question for you guys. It's unrelated, but it pertains to me because I have a pilot podcast coming up for the Bad Dinner Guest Sports Show, and we still have yet to come to a name for it because all your quirky sports names like Out of Bounds are already taken.
Wait a second. Hold up. Let me point something out. Maybe it should be like a book. You do it and then you title it after it's done.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to have to do because I'm going to be going live here in about 15
Oh, yeah, you're not going to have time.
I have barely enough time to get. I'm going to get to Lou, so people, anybody interesting, people will hear. Lou will be on Twitch live streaming his Fallout game again while I sit next to him and chat with Sean about sports. And later tonight, we will be getting on the Bad Dinner Guest flagship stage.
Can I say one last thing? You have had a podcast bukkake today. You've been everywhere doing it, and you're still stopping. At least I'm going to leave now. I mean, we did the interview, and then we did Bread and Circus, and now we do this.
I've got 2 more.
You have 2 more.
I've got 2 more. So,
jeez. So you're not done being sprayed on.
No, I have not hit the caboose yet. So any thoughts, guys, for a sports show? Name?
Like a name of it.
It's got to fit the bad dinner guest sort of mantra.
Let's call it sports shit. Sports shit.
Benchwarmers, that's got to be one. That's the thing about
the water
industry.
The watermen.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I'm not a writer, so
let's see. Well, what type of name are you trying to get? Like a funny name?
Just something that says that we're quirky. And we talk about the odd parts of sports, because just like anything else we do here, it's not just cut and dry.
Broadcast journalists.
No. Well, you know what? I'll spare the audience.
ESPN contributors.
Yes, contributors.
You guys can join us live here again on the Bad Dinner Guest channel here in about 20-30 minutes for our yet-to-be-named sports podcast.
Oh, broadcast journalists?
Yeah. BJ's.
This is the